Hi, good evening. Everybody can hear? Is it okay? Good. And everybody speak English good enough? Okay. So first of all, thank you very much for the invitation and to everybody that organized this event and helped with that. And thank you for you that came here tonight, especially those of you, if there are, who do not agree with me. So thank you for coming here. And when I finish my presentation, I invite maybe even to start with those of you who do not agree with me. Because I've done lots of speaking, and many times it's preaching to the choir. So if some of you here do not agree, I'm here especially because of you. So thank you again. The questions that you are invited to ask are anything from personal questions, psychological, military, history, politics, anything that you can think about. Everything is legitimate. Before I'll start, I want to read to you a song that my grandfather taught me. It was written in Yiddish just before the Second World War, and it became the unofficial anthem in the ghettos during the Second World War and the Holocaust. And it basically says in Yiddish, it was translated later to Hebrew, my town is burning and you are just standing still around, ignoring my pain, ignoring the fire, ignoring the houses that are being burnt and demolished, ignoring the shout. Please, please come and help. Help to put out the fire. Help to stop the massacre. Please help us. So it's a song of cry, a shout for the people around to wake up and to engage in ending the suffering. And this is the narrative I was raised upon in my childhood in Israel. I was born in 72, and my grandparents, all of them came from families from around Eastern Europe. All of their family died in the Holocaust, and they, the one that came to Palestine in the 30s, were the only one almost to survive. And I grew up with this narrative that it happened because the world was silent. In 2008, around Christmas, Hanukkah, and the beginning of 2009, I was already an activist. I was not anymore in the Air Force, but there was a big operation in Gaza in which many people were killed by the Air Force, the same Air Force I used to be part of. Israel called it Operation Kastled, but I just call it a massacre. And I decided that it's about time to translate this Yiddish song that I really liked. And I used to even sing in school and in ceremonies of remembrance the Holocaust. As a child, I used to sing this song in Hebrew and Yiddish. So I decided that it's about time to translate it to Arabic. So I'll just read you the song. Es brennt, mein Städtel es brennt, oi unser Orum Städtel nebech brennt, beise Winden mit ihr Gossen, reißen, brechen und zerblasen, starker noch die wilde Flammen, als arum schon brennt. Und ihr steht und guckt so sich mit verlegte Hand, und ihr steht und guckt so sich, unser Städtel brennt. Harik, ya Ikhwan Harik, بلادنا حرقت كلها ودخانها الأسود يعلو ويسودها اللهب الحراب آثارها لم تبقى إنها تحترق وأنتم مكتفو الأيدي دون أن تمدوا يد العون وأن تطفئوا لهب النار التي بالبلاد. So I was not always like that. I was born in a military base, actually, in the south of Israel. My father was a fighter pilot and a squadron commander in the war in 1973. And I got quite a strong Zionist education. I know that you here in Czech Republic are exposed to Zionist education. So I was brought up to believe in the system and to believe in the Zionist narrative that I can talk a lot about. But one of the things that was the result of this narrative is that my dream was to be like every boy, like my father. I wanted to be a pilot and to protect my country. So when I finished high school, I didn't have doubts whether to go to the military or not. My doubts were only where in the military I will be more helpful. So I was running on the mountains and getting in shape, all in order to join the military and be the best soldier ever. I started the pilot course and finished it as a helicopter pilot, flying rescue missions and flying commando forces. I participated in many operations, mostly bringing injured people back to hospital, soldiers, people after suicide attack, but also commando forces in Lebanon, in the West Bank. But slowly, as I was growing up, there were some cracks in this big wall of belief in the system. And these cracks were challenging my world perception, but they didn't challenge the fact that I am part of the military. That was totally different thing. I was kind of for peace, for no war. I was against the settlement project in Gaza and the West Bank. I was against the war in Lebanon. But it didn't stop me from participating in being part of this military that did all these things. I remember, especially in the second Intifada, the second Palestinian revolt, uprising, the beginning of the 2000, 2001, 2002, the Israeli Air Force started to assassinate Palestinian suspects. So it would start with the Air Force bombing a car, driving outside of Gaza City, for example, or outside in the hills. And later on, they would shoot the car when it's right next to some buildings. And eventually, it took a few months, they started shooting bombs and rockets and smart weapons, smart missiles, the way they call it, with drones, with attack helicopters, with attack fighter jets, in the middle of the most dense towns and cities in Gaza and the West Bank. The result was that many innocent people were killed. Children, women, old people, young people. And they call it collateral damage. They started calling it not innocent civilians, but people that were not involved. So the language also went through a process of Orwellianization, if you want. Like everything got this distortion in order to make it justified in the mind of the Zionist audience or the soldiers like me. I think it was around 2002 when a good friend of mine from Germany, Nicole, who came a few years before to volunteer in Israel in one of the old people houses to repent. You know, there is lots of that stuff coming from Germany. People come to volunteer in different organizations. And she came as well, and we became good friends. We sang together in the same choir. We were, the families became friends and everything. But Nicole came back, went back to Germany, and she had friends who were volunteers in Gaza, in Shifa and other hospitals. And during the second Intifada, they called her and they said that they are experiencing horrific things. Horrible things happen there where children are being killed and maimed, and no one talk about it. It stays there. So Nicole called and said, Yonatan, I know you are a pilot in the Air Force, you are a captain, you probably know about that stuff. And you know what I did? I already started feeling that something here is wrong, but when you are not feeling secure about something, you become very defensive. So everyone that just mentions something, you attack. And if you think about the way the Israeli media works and the Israeli propaganda works, that's the way it works. So I started shouting at her on the phone. How dare you criticize my military and my army? The Israeli army and the Israeli Air Force, that's how I said, is the most moral army in the world. That's the guy that is sitting in front of you. I was shouting at her like crazy. How dare she criticize us? And a few weeks later, I woke up and I heard the news that a few hours before, at 1 o'clock, 1 a.m., after midnight, it was the night of the 22nd of July, 2002, an Israeli fighter jet, an F-16, with a pilot and a navigator, flew over Gaza in El Burj neighborhood and dropped a 1-ton bomb on the house of one of the leaders of the Hamas. They killed 15 people, about 9 children. Some of the children were young babies, few weeks old. One was in its mother's womb, not even been born. And from the house that was 3 floors, there was a huge hole in the ground that was left. And about 150 people were severely injured in all around that area. People that became blind, burned, without limbs for the rest of their lives. And I guess this bomb not just killed these Palestinian kids, but maybe also the naive Zionist boy that I used to be. And he never came back, that Zionist boy. It was suddenly clear to me that this is an act of terrorism. This is worse than any suicide attack, when you go and kill children in the middle of the night in the most densely populated neighborhood in the world, maybe. And there is no way to justify it. There is no way to claim that you were stopping someone from doing something because it's in the middle of the night, in the most dense populated area in the world, killing so many children, and later on justifying it and saying that, I remember the commander of the Air Force said that everything was done within the moral envelope of the Israeli Air Force. And he also said that the pilots should sleep well at night because everything they do is okay, they are protecting us. But some of us didn't sleep well at night. And although I myself didn't participate in this kind of attack, I was flying mostly rescue missions. I didn't shoot myself, I didn't press any trigger, but nevertheless I felt that it's as if I dropped that bomb, because for the Palestinian children that are dead now, it doesn't really matter if I fly this helicopter and the guy next to me is flying this jet fighter. And together with other people in the Air Force, we managed to organize a group of, like you said, about 27 Air Force pilots. Some of them were even a brigadier general, very high rank in the military. And I was the lowest rank, captain, with a few of my friends from my own squadron. Some of them were my students, some of them my colleagues. And we have representatives from all branches of the Israeli Air Force, so helicopters, attack helicopters, rescue helicopters, fighter jet, transport. And we draft this letter exactly today, 16 years ago. So it was the 25th of September, 25th of September 2003, just a few days before Rosh Hashanah, the new Jewish year, that now it's going to be on Sunday. And we thought that it will be like a way to try to wake up the Israeli society, maybe wake up more military people, maybe create enough noise to shake a little bit our sleeping society. And it was later called the pilot's letter. We got quite a big exposure in the media, mostly because in one minute we became traitors. A second before, we were brave pilots that dedicated their life to the military and to protection of Israel. And the second morning, you are a traitor. So it takes time to get used to, this change, and you're not so much loved anymore. But some people like you, some people don't like you, but no one is indifferent. And in a way, that's what we wanted to create. We wanted to stop this indifference and make people start thinking. After that, together with other Israeli activists that refused in different organizations, we thought that it's not enough just to say no. To say no, I'm not willing to be part of this and that, I don't want to be a criminal, I don't want to kill anyone. It's good. But it's not enough, because it's not actually stopping what's happening. And then we actually were approached by Palestinian former fighters that spent many years in Israeli prisons. And we had a very strange and moving first meeting next to Bethlehem in Bejala, with a group of Israeli refusers, Israeli conscientious objectors like me, my brother and other people, and a group of Palestinian former fighters. It was very scary, the first meeting, because we were afraid that they will try to kidnap us and do something to us, and they were afraid that we are from the Mukhabarat, from the intelligence, and we are going to, just do something bad to them. But then when you get to meet each other, something changed, like a wall falls, a wall crumbles between human beings. And you start to see that, we are not so different, actually. We were, by chance, we were born few kilometers from each other, but we are not so different. And that's what started this organization that was called later Combatants for Peace. The idea was that now we are going to struggle together, hand in hand, arm to arm, against the occupation, against the apartheid, and for mutual peace and coexistence and everything. It was very sweet, it was very nice, and it was kind of heartwarming. For those of us who went through lots of personal difficulties and a long journey of realization and stuff, it was like coming to shore and to suddenly have hope, suddenly fall in love in your previous enemy, your former enemy. So spiritually, it was amazing. Nevertheless, it didn't really change the life of the Palestinians. So the Israelis, we went on with our lives. I was fired from all the companies I worked for in Israel because they didn't want someone who supports the Palestinian in that way. But I found a job in the States and I managed my life. I went to become also a facilitator for dialogue and working with the students, and I did some music and recorded an album. So I kept on with my life while my Palestinian friends were still in jail. Some real jail, some jail of being locked in these ghettos that we have. You know, we have to call it in its name. A good friend of mine, as we were speaking and doing all this activity and going to give lectures in Israeli society, in the Palestinian society, outside of the country, at the same time, his young daughter went to school, and in the break, while going outside to buy some sweets in the shop, she was shot to death by the Israeli border police. Just to emphasize, you know, the situation is not a balanced situation. It's not two enemies getting to know each other and deciding to stop the war. It's not a war. It's an ongoing oppression, occupation, where my boot is on the neck of my friend, even if I don't want to. Even if I don't want to, the structure of the situation makes me the occupier, the master, the one with all the privileges, with all the rights, that even if I protest, if I say things that are very, very hard about my country or my government, I can still be relatively free. I can still go in and out. I have the democratic system helping me. Lawyers can help me if I'm being sued or something like that. While my Palestinian friends have none of this protection. So if we both go to a demonstration, for example, we went into a demonstration in Hebron, in the Shuhada Street. It's a street that is you are not allowed to walk there if you are a Palestinian. If you're a Jew, if you're a settler or international, you can walk there. But if you're a Palestinian, it's not for you. So we made a demonstration walking there together. The Israelis were not jailed, not arrested, and the Palestinians were arrested. Just to give you the impression, if we go to a demonstration, a non-violent demonstration somewhere in the West Bank, if I'm arrested, I spend 3-4 hours in the police station, and then I am being released. And my Palestinian friend can stay for half a year in an administrative detention without even court or anything. Not to talk about the people in Gaza that are living for more than 12 years in an open-air prison without decent water, without food, without freedom. So we started thinking of what's the next thing. If the situation is not balanced and we are not good enough affecting the reality in this mutual organization, we need to do something else. And the idea is that the struggle is a Palestinian struggle for liberation. Yeah, it's good for me also to live in a real democratic country with everyone are equal and there is no fighting and there is no killing. But the struggle is the struggle of the oppressed to be free. And if I, from the side of the oppressor, wants to affect the reality, the best thing I can do is to join the struggle, led by the oppressed, led by the Palestinian people. In 2005, about 99% of Palestinian civil society with the different NGOs came up with what is called the Bds Declaration, Boycott, Divestment and Sanctions, a non-violent way to affect the reality in Israel and Palestine and to bring about change, human rights base, that the world will start to recognize Palestinian people as equal people that has the right to breathe, to eat, to walk, and to be free as every other human being in the world. The movement became more and more known around the world, and we decided that it's time that we will open the Israeli branch of that movement. Since around that time, 2008, 2009, I'm a member or like affiliate with a group that is called Boycott from Within, and it means basically that we are Israeli citizens who support the Palestinian call for boycott, divestment, and sanctions. I can talk more about that, but I want to go forward and finish that part of the presentation. If you have questions about that, especially, you are very welcome to ask, especially if you don't agree. The other thing that happened was 2010. There was a flotilla to Gaza to try to break the illegal blockade on the Gaza people. There was a famous ship called the Mavi Marmara that I understand that you were part of. I was at the time in the States, and then one morning I wake up and I heard that there was a massacre on one of the boats going to Gaza. It was a Turk flag boat with hundreds of people on board, many journalists, many people from different countries, but mostly Turks. Later on, I learned that the same squadron, the same helicopter squadron, I was flying Black Hawk helicopters, the same helicopter squadron that participate there is where I used to fly. And they came in the middle of the night and dropped commando Navy SEALs on the boat and shot to death 10 or 11 people. Later on, other people that were injured died in hospital. To me, it was clear that I have to participate in the next boat that will sail to Gaza. By the way, the Israeli propaganda tried to make it as if the soldiers were miserably attacked and totally turn it upside down, while Israel attacked the activist in the middle of the sea in international water, and people were shot in point blank in the middle of the head. So they spread in all over the world, in the media, an image of few seconds where the soldiers coming down from the helicopters, and then some of the activists on the boat hitting the soldiers. But they showed just that. There were 900 hours of videos of journalists, of the cameras in the boat, of the military itself filming, 900 hours of what happened on that Mavi Marmara in that night. And all the world got to see is few seconds that the Israeli military chose to show the world. So until they will release the other 900 hours, I don't want to hear anybody talking about they attacked us and they were brutal toward the soldiers. What happened to me personally is that I found out that there is a Jewish organization in Europe, British and Belgium and France and other Jewish organizations also connected to American organizations that are organizing a boat with Jewish activists going to Gaza. It was a very small yacht, 10-meter long. I was, because of my experience as a sailor and I had the skipper license, I joined as a crew member. And in approximately that time, September 2010, we sailed to Gaza, and together with us on the boat were a Holocaust survivor. He already passed away since. We had some Jewish professors from the States, a friend of mine who is a bereaved father. His daughter was killed in a suicide attack in Jerusalem. So quite a significant group of people. We brought our message of solidarity. We had some musical instrument, some symbolic musical instruments, letters, but the idea was symbolically to show people in Gaza that the world is not silent, and there are also some Jewish organizations and some Israeli activists that are not willing to stand still and be silent while they are locked there in this ghetto. When we approached Gaza shore, about 12 miles from Gaza, the Israeli Navy started approaching us from all directions. They came on board. We were singing peace songs and trying to cheer ourselves up, singing songs in Hebrew and in English, and just continuing with our course towards Gaza. It took very quick for them to board us. We didn't resist in any way. We just hugged each other. Nevertheless, one of the commanders, the commander of the soldiers, came to me and moved my life vest aside and put a taser gun on my heart and shot me in my heart. And it's not a nice feeling. Your whole body loses control and you kind of shake like that for some seconds. And you kind of lose control. I remember the shout that came out of my lungs because it's like a scream that I didn't know I can produce in this pitch. But after a few seconds I recovered and, you know, I'm fine, I'm here. If I was a Palestinian fisherman, it would not be a taser gun. It would be a live bullet straight into my head, or to the boat to make the boat sink, and then I would drown with the boat. Because that's what Palestinian fishermen are going through in the last decade. So it's important to remember, you know, it's not always so easy, and you don't always get the best treatment, but I still am an Israeli Jew, ex-military, experiencing the privilege of an apartheid. Apartheid that is democratic for the Jews and apartheid for the non-Jews or for the non-citizens. There were several other sales after that I participated. In one of them, we thought how to combat, how to deal with the fact that the military seals the message, the image of what happened on this boat, for example, is sealed, is not going out to the world, because you're in the middle of the sea. There is a special airplane flying above that make this electronic masking of, there is no way to communicate through satellite phone or, you know, live streaming on Facebook or something like that. It's not possible. And even if you are filming it with yourself, you know, trying to film it on your phone or a camera, the first thing that the soldiers will go to is these filming devices. So the idea is that they can do whatever they want, and the next morning in the Israeli media and the world, in CNN or stuff, you'll see an image of a good-looking Israeli female soldier handing water and fruits to the activists, and it will say in the headline, the taking over of the boat happened without any violence and any casualties. And there is nothing you can do because they control the message. So it was 2012 in one other attempt that I participate with the ship to Gaza with the activists from Sweden and Spain and Norway and other countries. And in this time we thought to try to be smart and on the belly of this big boat, we didn't have just a music instrument and toys for kids and medical aid. We also had some homing pigeon, yonei doar, like pigeons that are trained to fly into this their home in a small island somewhere in next to the Peloponnese in Greece. And the idea was, and that's what we did, was to put this device, these little plastic things on the legs of the pigeon. And when the soldiers started to come on board, and we had several parliament members from Europe, from different countries, and they were tasering us, shooting us with these electric guns in the head and in the body and in the, you know, everywhere. So shooting these videos, throwing it to the belly of the ship, and then someone was sitting there putting the little memory sticks from the memory cards from the cameras into the legs of the pigeons. And when the next group of soldiers came, my job and another Norwegian guy was to open the cage and let all the pigeons fly out and hopefully somehow make it from the middle of the ocean to their island in Greece. And then somehow we can get the images, and the Israeli military will not control the message in this case. I remember just the scene where the soldiers running towards you with all the weapon and with the masks, and like it's quite frightening in this moment. And then the pigeons flying towards them, they almost crash into the water because these sticks were quite heavy, but somehow they managed to go up and set on the mast of the boat. And they didn't go this 40 miles, 80 kilometers all the way to the shore. They just sat there on the top of the mast, and for about 12 hours of being towed by the Israeli warship toward the captivity in Ashdod military base, they were just sitting there and pooping on all of us, and every now and then they would go to a victory circle, fly, and come back to the mast. And I just remember that every time I felt a little despair, I just looked up and I saw the pigeons flying. I thought, okay, maybe there is some hope. And when we got closer to the shore, as if like their commander bird told them to take off, and all of them took off and disappeared in the horizon. And I remember that for weeks and months after that, after I was released from jail, it was just a few days, I was thinking about these few pigeons that maybe still survived, and maybe they, fly slowly, trying to make it. It's a long way through the coast, up to Lebanon, Syria, Turkey, and then Greece and the islands. It's a long journey, and maybe a helicopter, Apaches, drones, and like Israeli fighter jets are trying to chase them and shoot them down, so they will not bring that message. And eventually, one of them, I think, made it to their place. It was months after, and we managed to retrieve the information and the images and the videos, and they did a very big expose, like a long article about it for the Israeli TV. And 5 minutes before it was supposed to be aired, it was censored. So you do all this, but eventually they cut it. So it was just, why did I tell you this long story? It's just like an example of how, when we don't have the force, we don't have the army, we don't have the ability to open these prisons with force because we are weak. We don't have this strength of one of the biggest militaries in the world, in the Middle East at least. We have to be creative. We have to think smart. We have to try to come up with different solutions, and not again and again with the same solution that doesn't work. And that will connect me to what I talked about before, the Bds movement. It's the first time, it's already more than 10 years, but it's after decades of apartheid and occupation and Nakba and suffering of people all over the world in refugee camps, inside Israel, outside, in the West Bank, in Gaza. And we finally have a movement that gives an option to people around the world to take part in the struggle. You don't have to be a soldier to refuse. You don't have to be an Israeli citizen to vote. You don't have to be a Palestinian who connects with his family back home, and you can be a guy, a girl, a boy living in Prague or anywhere else in the world, and you can take part in this struggle for liberation, for justice, for human rights, for equality for all. And when you do that, you don't just support the Palestinian people. You support also the Jewish people and the Israeli people. And when someone tells you that this is anti-Semitism, the fact that they blame us, a non-violent movement, of being anti-Semitic because we criticize a state, this itself is a form of anti-Semitism. If you protect human rights, if you struggle for freedom for everyone, you are on the side of the anti-racist. You are not on the side of the Islamophobes and anti-Semitism. So if there is one message I want to convey to you and to make it very clear, is that thing. BDS is a non-violent approach to an ongoing oppression of decades. And if you want to support both the Palestinians and the Israelis, you should join this movement. I think it's a good place to stop. I have many more things to say, but I know that it's a long evening, and it's maybe a bit difficult for some of you that are not so well into these issues and maybe hear about it for the first time. Let's open it for questions. And if you want, after that, I can sing one song if we'll still have a good atmosphere. We'll start with those of you here that don't agree with me. I'm happy. Hi. I'm happy that you are here. And the first thing I want to tell you is that anything I do, everything, both my speaking and my actions, my direct actions, my indirect actions, in all the last years since I became an activist for about 16 years, is driven from a place of love to my people, to my family, to everyone that lives in that piece of land. And we may not agree with each other, and we may part and say goodbye tonight without agreement. What I do want you to try to understand and believe me is that even if we don't agree, there are many ways to solve problems, and the most important thing that we will be honest with ourselves and try to be aware of our own blind spots, of the things that we ourselves not seeing about what we believe. So I agree that I'm not perfect. I may be wrong in different things, but once you listen to me, please try to understand that it comes from a place of care, also about you and the people that do not agree with me. Okay?
Should I come closer? Or?
Yeah, just
Okay. Hi, hello everyone. My name is Yair. I'm 25. I'm from Israel. I have served in the IDF, same as you. And I just want to say a few things to balance the conversation a bit. First of all, I want to say thank you for coming. Like I said before, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. And I want to tell you that I don't think the thing you're doing is very moral, at least not from my experience, because you're coming here and you're speaking to an international audience, an audience that does not know the roots of the conflict, that do not know what goes on in Israel, do not know what goes on in Palestine, Gaza, whatever you want to call it. And I want to tell you, I have been to Gaza. I've been on the ground. I'm 25. I have been in the Tzukatan war. I've been there. And I was part of a unit that our job was to investigate the tunnels, the advancing tunnels into Israel. And we went inside and we saw everything that happened there. And I don't want war. I want peace. But I've seen what goes on in there. The concrete that builds these walls, the European concrete, builds the tunnels that run underneath kibbutz and cities and threatens children. I have been inside those tunnels. I have seen the dossiers, the files that the terrorists, freedom fighters, whatever you want to call them, that they carry out when they go onto missions. I've seen that they have pictures of children's playgrounds and children's rooms in kibbutzes, and I know what they were targeting, and I know what they were trying to do. They were not trying to achieve peace that way. I'm sorry. They were trying to hurt us, and to come here in Europe, no less, in front of an audience that does not know what you're speaking exactly, and to compare us to Nazi Germany, and to say that Gaza is a form of a ghetto, it's not moral. It's basically you're not telling them the truth. Because I would like to ask you and everyone here a question. Has the Jews in Germany in the Holocaust ever shot anyone? Have they ever stabbed anyone? Have they ever blew up any buses, shot rockets from their ghettos? No? Nothing? Yeah. I don't know that in the history either, so yeah.
Let's just respect Yair. He was asking an honest question, and תודה רבה. באמת תודה רבה שאתה עומד פה ואתה אומר את הדברים. The first thing I want to tell you is that I used to think exactly like you. That's how I used to think. And the way I reacted when the first attacks happened, I was exactly standing where you are standing. So I understand how you feel.
I disagree.
Okay, I just told you that I was in your place, and you don't have to agree. But
have you ever
to the
been
question? But you asked several good questions, so let me say to the question about the resistance of the ghettos. I grew up in Israel, learning about the Mered Ghetto Varsha, the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. What do you think the resistance in the ghetto do? Gaza ghetto exists 12 years. You know how many people live in Gaza? About 2 million people. Maybe a little more, maybe a little less. 50% of them are children. So we're talking about 1 million children locked for 12 years. The Warsaw Ghetto, in which my own family was there, and several of them were killed there, was during the war, I think, less than 4 years or 5 years, maybe even less. Maybe 3.5 years or something like that.
Yeah.
3.5 years. And it was about 500,000. Most of them were later killed in the camps. But they actually resist. And I grew up on this notion that when you are locked in a ghetto, you have the right to resist.
But
when you are locked in a big open-air prison for so many years, you have the right to resist. I personally chose non-violence. Since I was part of a violent system, I stopped and I chose to cooperate with those who struggle non-violently. So I sail to Gaza, I write things, I spray a graffiti, I do dialogue meetings, I talk to you, I support, I sign declarations, and I cooperate with Palestinians who are doing the same. But I am not in a place to judge the fighters in Gaza that are locked there for their life. Some of them were born and never seen life that are not locked in a ghetto.
Really?
Some of the children that were born that are 12 years old, they were born into living in a ghetto. They never could go and visit their relatives in Hebron, say. They never could go and study in a school outside of Gaza. They are locked there. So I do not come here to call for violence. No, not at all. I do the opposite. I talk and preach about the power of non-violent struggle, such as the Bds Movement. If you want to help and protect these kibbutz, and some of my family are there, and my father has an olive grove right next to right next to Ashkelon. So when I helped him there, working in the olive grove, the missiles, sometimes these little rockets that Palestinians improvise and build, they can also fall on me. But if I really want to protect people in Sderot and in Ashkelon and in the kibbutz around Gaza, the first thing I should do is stop the ongoing massacre. Just think about this image, and I know that it's not nice to say it as a man giving it as an example, but if you have a group of men vandalizing, even raping someone, and this person is scratching and harming the rapist, the first thing you want to do in order to stop the scratching is to stop the rape. You don't continue and harm the person that is locked and being massacred and being brutalized again and again, thinking that it will bring you security. One of the things that is the problematic way of thinking of most of my friends and family in Israel, and also the way I used to think, is that if I apply more force, I will convince the Palestinians to lose their hope for being free. There is no way to remove the desire of freedom from millions of people. There is no way. Just like we grew up on this narrative of we had to be free. Hatikva, the Israeli anthem, that it's all about liot am chofshi, to be a free nation, to be a free people. It's all about that. So unless you recognize that your Palestinian neighbors or people that live around you or with you have the same rights, the same right like you and me, you will never be free. You will never be safe.
Can I ask you something? Because you speak a lot. I'm sorry. I'm Petra. My English is not very good, so be tolerant with me. I want to ask you if you think that Hamas could ever think as you. Because we all here can respect you and really agree with you. But we know that Hamas will never respect Israel as a sovereign country. So maybe the question is not for us, but your government could deal with Hamas. And we know that in 1948, many Palestinian people were excluded from their home. So maybe they weren't compensate for this. And this is the problem. Don't you think so?
Thank you, Petra. Yeah. First of all, I will accept your criticism, and I will try to answer a bit shorter so more people will have a chance to answer. Yeah. I think you are right. The Nakba that happened in 48.
Wait. The question starts with Hamas. So
I will also say that, and that's why I write when you ask the question, so I will not miss any part of the question. But thank you for mentioning that. The big problem or the root cause, we cannot go back to 1967 like some people or organization try to. The root cause is 1948, where I guess maybe a few of you know, it's between 400 to 500 towns, villages, Palestinian communities were demolished and destroyed, and numbers saying between 700 to 800 Palestinian refugees were expelled and went all over the world. Some internal refugees, some external refugees. And until we deal with that issue about the right of return, we will not completely solve all the problems. In other activity that I am part of, I'm also doing talks and participating in an organization in Israel that is all about teaching Israelis about the right of return. You know that we Jews, we learned in schools and in Passover and then in like all our tradition is about the yearning to go back to Jerusalem after 2,000 years. L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim, next year in Jerusalem. This is part of the prayers that everyone learn, and part of the narrative that we came back to the land after 2,000 years. Palestinians were driven out of their land 71 years. So it's sometimes strange how some Israeli politicians and thinkers are expecting the Palestinians to give up their right to return to the land after 71 years, but emphasize on our right, the Jews, to come back to our home after 2,000 years. You know, whether it was exactly us or some far relatives. Now I'll go back to the issue of Hamas. I'm not here to speak and to defend Hamas. You will not hear me saying that. No. I'm for non-violent solution. I'm for equality. If you want to talk about specifics, I'm for one-state solution, equal rights for all, the right of return. I'm not here to promote, military actions or military solutions.
You're dodging the question.
But the Hamas,
do you recognize the right to Israel to be a state of God?
Just to inform you, when several times during the Prime Minister Sharon and even after, actually Hamas was willing to negotiate and to come up to an agreement of Hudna that will be as long as 20 years if Israel will stop the occupation in Gaza and the West Bank. There were several acts and steps by the Hamas to come to negotiation with Israel, but Israel refused. Israel not just refused that, Israel refused something even more simple and more that could be simple for even Zionists to accept, the Arab Initiative that since 2002, I think, all Arab nations signed an offer to Israel to withdraw from Gaza and the West Bank and to have complete peace and normalization with a just solution for the refugees in return of peace with the whole Arab world. Sharon government, Netanyahu, of course, and any Israeli government, they didn't want to talk about it, didn't want to mention it. So yes, both the Hamas and all the Arab nations offered us. And when you talk about refusing to negotiate, refusing to settle, our side, the Israeli side, have a big burden on its shoulders. But I'm not going to sit here and support the Hamas. I'm not a Hamas supporter. I'm supporting of the people. You know, when I was arrested last time, a year ago, I was on the boat that came from Norway all over Europe and eventually tried to break the Gaza blockade. I was arrested on the boat that was called Al-Awda. Al-Awda means the return, the right of return of the Palestinians. And when the police officer or Secret Service guy, whoever he was, interrogated me in the middle of the night, he told me that I am accused of trying to aid the enemy. And I tell him, and I tell you, and I tell you, and I tell you, Yair, that if 1 million children in Gaza are my enemy, I'm proud to aid them. I'm proud to help them. Because children and people are not deserved to be treated like that. Everyone, just like you and me, have the right to be free. Everyone have the right to be in basic dignity, basic human right. And yes, it's not nice to find a tunnel like that. It's not nice. But it's naive to think that you can lock people, 2 million people, for so many years, deprive them from basic human right and expect them not to try to struggle against it. This is the naivety. I'm not the peacenik naive guy. I'm not the bleeding heart guy that is too naive to discuss their real life. No, I think the naivete is on the side of those who still hold on this Zionist idea that you can bomb people from the air, from the ground, from the sea for decades and expect them to accept you and not resist. This is the naivety. And yes, I can say all these horrible things about my government and about my military and still love my people and still love my country, because that's what gives me hope. Gives me hope that I can be here, talk to you, my Palestinian friends, talk to my Czech, European friends, and discuss these things, you know. And even if we don't agree, the fact that we open, it's like, you know, sometimes just blowing a little bit bubble with creating a little bit of space of dialogue and discussion, this is the beginning. So if you go tonight home and think, oh, Jonatan is just this radical guy, that's okay. What I want to create here, also in your mind and your heart, is the idea that this space of dialogue is essential for us to try to go forward, to try to understand, to try to correct our doing, even if we don't agree with each other.
Can I respond? Or
yeah, I want you to respond, but let other people, and then I promise to give you, Yair, time to respond.
My name is Omar. I am Palestinian from Gaza. Thank you, Yair, for your point of view, and thank you for your balanced speech all the time. What I'll tell Mr. Yair, that the problem of Palestinian is not only what he expressed about the tunnel or Hamas. There is more than 100 party like Hamas in Israel itself ignore the Palestinian right and refuse any kind of resolution or solution with the Palestinian. Even Netanyahu himself said a lot of the time, Israel wants Hamas to stay in Gaza because he don't want solution. Even when Ariel Sharon withdrew from Gaza, he encouraged Hamas to make the problem with Fatah and control the if something like this, I'll ask you, if something like this happened in West Bank, what Israel will do?
what, if they shot at us?
No. If part of Hamas make some kind of control over any city in West Bank, what do you think Israel will do?
In 2005, Israel withdrew from Gaza. We had no control over what happens there. In 2007, Gaza had an election, correct? Yes. They chose Hamas over Ashraf, right? Yes. And they chose Hamas, and then there was a small civil war for a few weeks. A lot of Hamas killed a lot of Ashraf, right? And Hamas took over control. Yes? So the Palestinians in Gaza chose Hamas as their sovereign leader in a democratic elections. So Israel, of course, they blockaded Gaza because Hamas basically says in the first letter of its charter that they are devoted to killing the Jews. They are devoted to destroying Israel. You can look it up on the internet. It's not my words. That's what they want. They want to destroy Israel. They want to destroy the Jews. And the solution that my friend Yonatan offered, the one-state solution which the Arabs and the Palestinians agrees, it's the same as destroying Israel, because it basically means that there will be, 6 million Jews and about 7-8 million Palestinians in Israel, which basically means that there will no longer be a Jewish country. And yes, and to your question, yes, I want you to have peace. I want Gaza and I want the West Bank to have peace. I want you to have the ability to self-define and to choose your own destiny. But I can't do it over my life and the security of my people, and I will never do that. Because I'm sorry, like you, I'm sure you care about your son more than you care about me. I will care about my son more than I care about a different person's son. So I will care about Israel and you will care about Palestine. That's your right. That's what we should do. But to come here and say that it's Israel's fault, it's not true. Because Israel accepted the 47 UN resolution to split apart Palestine-Israel. After that, the armies of the Arab nations came in and tried to destroy Israel and destroy the Jews and take over all of Palestine. And Israel has accepted and have given more and more freedom to the Palestinians over time. We had 5 or 6 negotiations, I think, that Israel accepted and that the Palestinians didn't accept. So, yes, so...
Please, sorry for that. Let me ask you, do you accept the right of Palestinians to establish their own state in West Bank and Gaza Strip without occupation, without settlements? Yes. If you accept it, I'll shake hands with you and let us work with him to do that.
Of course I accept it. As long as we both live in peace and security, I accept anything you want.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. First of all, I didn't want to interrupt because this is the exact dialogue that I think we need to have. So thank you. Thank you for both. I don't agree with many of the things you said, but I'm happy that you said them and happy that you are here. And I know that it's not feeling nice to be in a room that maybe many people don't agree with you, but I've been there also. The narrative that you described of, we were wanting peace always and the Arab countries came and took over, that's the narrative. That's the narrative. Hey, Yair, I was kind to you, so no. That's the narrative I grew up with. That's the narrative you can find in Israeli education textbooks. Today, you have professors, both Jewish and Israeli professors, together with Palestinian professors, that writing different history books that are not these Zionist propaganda textbooks. It was not like that. Tochnit Daled, the fourth plan of Ben-Gurion, was very clear of trying to clean Palestine from most of his Palestinians in order to create a democratic state where demographically you can be the ruler. I think that what you mentioned about I care about my child and you care about your child, it's coming from a sentence that many people like to come to us when they don't agree with us and say, Aniyei ircha kodmim, the poor of your own city are coming first. And I think until we realize that all the poor are important, we will not be able to change this world to a better place. Because, there's no peace in the world as long as there are people somewhere being oppressed. And just to realize that we are sometimes looking for safety and peace and security, thinking that it can exist while other people are living without all this peace and safety and security, this is the naive thought. So no, I think that I need to start care about your child and about your child in the same way. I remember the first moment And I'm sorry I'm taking it down from the political, historical debate to a personal thing, but I think it makes an example. I remember the first moment that I heard about a car accident that happened in the Galilee, in the north of Israel, Palestine, and I was, for the first time, feeling that, no, I'm not waiting to hear if they were Arabs or Jews. You know what I mean? When you are living in Israel and you hear about a car accident in the Galilee where many Palestinians live, you hear that it's Palestinians from this village. You're not happy about that, but you're sad, a little less sad than that you would be if it's Jewish kids, Jewish people, Israeli people. And I remember the time that I overcame this racist embedded attitude, and I suddenly caught myself thinking, no, actually, it doesn't matter to me anymore if they are from this religion or that religion. No, I don't care. They could be Palestinian, secular, Christian, Muslims. I care about them just as I care about my own brothers and my own sisters. And this is the change of mindset that I believe could lead for a little bit development in that area. Just to mention in little things what you mentioned, it's not destroying Israel to have a one state with equal rights for all. It's destroying Jewish supremacy. Destroying Jewish supremacy is not destroying a country, it's not destroying Israel. It's destroying the fact that for years and decades we got used to be the masters. You cannot be the master and expect to be respected and expect to be free. Just like it didn't work in South Africa. You cannot be a white South Afrikaner, and believe in the supremacy of your own race while people are dying in the ghettos. It just doesn't work like that. Just like it didn't work in South Africa, it doesn't work in Israel and Palestine. And just like the solution in South African apartheid was also thanks to international pressure and a big boycott movement that, by the way, was led by many Jewish activists that were together with the ANC, with black struggle. I think also in this case, the Israeli apartheid, for the benefit of all of us, will end through international pressure. Let's maybe do one or two more questions and maybe wrap it.
Thank you. I'm Timea. I would like to ask you one personal question and one more general. The first question is about the approach of your family, how they reacted to your changed standpoint to Zionism. As you mentioned that you were brought up as a Zionist child or adult. And the second one is about the recent elections in Israel, because I think that it's quite obvious that a lot of people in Israel are annoyed or sick of Bibi. But if you see Benny Gantz as an alternative, because as I went through the program of his party, there is also a point of strengthening the settlements according to the nationality bill. So if you see Gantz as an alternative to Netanyahu, it will be the same, him as a prime minister, probably we will see how it will end and so on. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. First about my family, my father was obviously not supportive. I told him about that the night before, because I knew that as a fighter pilot, still going to all the meetings of the former commanders and stuff, he would not agree with me, but I didn't want to put him in a place where he will have to decide if to turn me in or not, so I kept it for the last night before, and then I showed him the list of all the pilots, and he saw there people that were his commanders, under him in the squadron, and he realized that it's something that is bigger than just something that his son did. But during the years, he went through his own process, and last March, as he was 77 and a day, he went with my mother, who became very, very active human rights activist with different Israeli women organizations. They went to the Jordan Valley, where the Israeli military is destroying small, poor Bedouin communities. Even in the middle of the hottest summer, they come and they rip the tents and they steal their water, and it's really a form of brutal torture. So they went there, and one of the shepherds, Palestinian shepherds, was harassed by military soldiers around, and they went together to try to intervene. And my father was arrested together with my mom for the first time. So it was the Jewish privileged kind of arrest. After a couple of hours, they were released. But I was quite proud that even a colonel in the Israeli Air Force that is not necessarily supporting all the views of his son is realizing now that what happens there is a form of very brutal occupation and apartheid. My brothers, my older brother was in Sayeret Matkal, is a special commando forces, and he just shortly after we published our letter, he published another letter of former commando soldiers in his unit. My younger brother also became an activist and organizer, and he's still very active. My sister is helping refugees in Tel Aviv, people that come from Africa and struggle against all these race laws that we have now. So most of the family, slowly came along, but we still have pockets of resistance, the way I call it. Some people would not talk to me. Some of my relatives would not want their kids to see me or talk to me because they say you're a really nice guy and you talk nice, and we don't want you to poison our children. And that's really sad. But we have to realize that when we make choices, we pay price. So, and I gain more friends than I lost friends. And I gain more happiness than I gain sadness. And even though I, to this day, cannot be employed as a pilot, civilian pilot, even in Israel, I used to work in a company that fix power lines and do all these things, and they kicked me out. It was too much for them. But it's a little price that I'm happy to pay. And of course, I don't compare myself to my friends, my former colleagues in the Air Force that are now well off, working in, making good money in different companies. I compare myself to my friends in Gaza that many of them don't have nothing. So I'm still feeling very, very privileged and rich. But the thing that happened to the Israeli society is that I think with all the government propaganda and all the poisoning of the hearts of kids in school with very, very racist textbooks, there is also an opposite current of people who were soldiers, or people that realize that they can actually struggle for something positive and start to see others as equal to them. And so societies in this time are very interesting to look, because you still have a lot of freedom. As a Jew, I have a lot of freedom to act and to speak and to meet and to do all this stuff, and that allows me to meet other people that think the same, and then you find little flowers of hope, blooming in a big area of darkness. So, yeah, the other part of what you ask about the elections, it's a big topic. I'll just tell you that I'm not seeing it as an alternative. The party of Gantz, who himself, he was the commander of the massacre in 2014. In 2014, you probably know, it was 2,200 or something like that Palestinians that were killed. About 500, more than 500 of these 2,200 Palestinians were children that were killed in 50 days of fighting. 500 children, and he's the guy that is in charge of that, and he took pride of all the Palestinians that he killed under his command during that time. So I cannot see it as an alternative. The difference is financially and personally, maybe they are not as corrupt as Netanyahu, that took to himself or did all these shticks with the media and stuff. But morally, I don't see a difference. Maybe even they are more brave to start another war with Iran and against the Palestinians than Bibi in this situation where he's so weak and under all this investigation. I don't know, but I really don't think that the solution will come from the political system in Israel. If you really look for hope, it's important not to hold on false hopes. So lose your hope that a change will come from within the Israeli political system. Yes, we have some nice things, the joint list of the Palestinians and some Israeli lefties, non-Zionists made quite good result in the elections, but that's not going to change the situation. The situation on the ground is going to change if you here and me and you will gather together and decide to put massive pressure. And I'll just give you an example. Czech Republic is not just historically supportive of the Israeli government and the military. Most of the Air Force training in the very first year, before 48 even, were done here in Czech Republic. And then they had to fly the planes all the way to Palestine, and then it was part of the war in 48. Now, as we speak, there are business deals of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars between the Israeli military system and the Czech arm industry. So if you want to do something positive, go online, Google a little bit, find out where is the nearby arm factory or special defense system, whatever, that is working together with the Israeli arm industry, and maybe do something nice on their gate, maybe a vigil, maybe a demonstration at their gate, maybe put some slogan so the workers that are waking up in the morning in Prague and drinking their coffee and going to build a weapon that eventually is going to kill Palestinian children will see your message on their way to work. I think this is the way to go. And when I say that, I want to emphasize one important thing. I see my partners in this struggle, those people who care about all these struggles, not just about Palestine and Israel, not just about the occupation. If you don't care about what European countries are doing to immigrants and different racist policies, if you don't care about what Donald Trump is doing to Mexicans in the border, separating kids with their families and doing horrific crimes, don't come to struggle with me for Palestinian liberation. Struggle together with us if you care about equal rights for everyone, whether they are Muslims, Jews, Christians, Buddhists, anywhere in the world. So this is really, really important, because also when people accuse us of, singling out Israel, I'm not singling out Israel. If you want to start a campaign now against the horrific human rights violation of Saudi Arabia, I'll join you. If you want to start a campaign now against the horrific things that the United States is doing to immigrants on the border, I'm with you. If you want to start a boycott campaign against a company that is connected to ICE, those border patrol thing in the United States, I will be the first one to join you. We are not singling out Israel. We are doing it a global struggle for freedom and for liberation for everyone. Maybe last question. Is it okay?
My name is Michal Brošárt. I pretty much agree with all you said in the last part, that we should be very tolerant to the other races, and that we should be tolerant with immigrants coming to Europe, and that we should stand against the human rights violations of the normal people. But on the other hand, would you also stand for some against the human rights violations, for example, from the side of Hamas or from the side of Palestinian Authority? Because from what I have read, there is like that you are talking about the atrocities of the Israeli defense forces on the Palestinians, which is, I of course don't support it, but from the data I have seen, more Palestinians killed Palestinians than Jews killed Palestinians during the past 70 years in the conflict. So I think you mentioned the 2014 war. So in this particular war, I think that because there is, I'm from Prague, I'm from Czech Republic, so I don't understand it that much, but there is also some kind of civil war between the Palestinians going on right now, right, between Hamas and Fatah, and I think that those Hamas and Fatah politicians are committing way more atrocities because of the statistical data I have seen than the Israeli government. So would you also support this movement which would be against Hamas and Fatah in the Palestine? That's my question. Thanks.
I think we don't agree about your statistic. I don't know where you took these numbers, like the numbers like the numbers of Palestinians that were killed by Israeli forces are way higher. But of course, in general, I am totally willing and am criticizing atrocities done by Palestinians. You know, that's the whole thing we are talking about. You know, stopping the cycle of violence. Take people to look at themselves and better their ways. But, and it's a big but, as an Israeli former military guy that is enjoying all the privilege of being a white Jew Israeli citizen, my first job is to criticize the ongoing occupation and oppression of Israel against Palestine, and not the human rights violation of inside Palestine. I'm against that, I'm criticizing that, but the struggle I choose is to stand alongside and be in solidarity of the oppressed Palestinians. And this is a very, very important difference. And I think maybe after this event, check the numbers and the statistic that you were given, because I think somewhere someone was trying to maybe not tell you the truth. Because it's very late, I'll answer and I'll talk to you after personally. And I'll be very happy to talk about every point that you just made. Because it's late and you probably want to go home. I'm thinking just to have a little different atmosphere for the end, and I'll sing you one song if you're willing. Okay, it's you can join and sing along if you want. You don't have to agree with all the message, but I hope the guitar is tuned. Yeah, pretty much. So this song I wrote some years ago about a hill next to the town where I grew up. It's a town in the outskirts of Tel Aviv called Ramat HaSharon, and just not far from the sea, maybe 10 minutes walk from where I grew up, there was a hill with an old mulberry tree and a ruin, a house that was ruined, and like lots of flowers and stuff. And it was very romantic. I used to go there with my childhood love in high school, and had many beautiful memories from that place. It took me many years to find out what was this hill, who lived there, what was the name of this town, why aren't they there, where did they go, who kicked them out, who prevent them from returning. And I wrote this song about kind of this refugee that grew up there and still remember the sound of the waves in the night, and is still yearning and longing to come back to his home. The name of my town where I grew up is Ramat HaSharon, and it's built on the land also of Ijlil el-Kibliya. Today you have a big cinema city there and lots of secret base from the Israeli intelligence and military. It's all on the ground of little village named Ijlil el-Kibliya. And just a few days before we recorded this song for my album, I went there to kind of remember the feeling of being there and get inspired. And I saw that bulldozers came and wiped it totally down, and where the hill and the little house and the mulberry tree were standing, now it's just flat. And you have the cinema city, and all these buildings have a little bit more parking space on the east side, if you ever go there. The chorus of the song is in Arabic, and it's basically saying Ya'udu. Ya'udu means they will return, hem yashuvu. From the notion that until we respect the refugees' plight, the refugee cry to return to their home, just like our narrative as Jews, it will not be real peace and equality and freedom for all. So it's kind of a prayer, and a secular prayer for the return and for peace. And you're very welcome to join me. I know most of the song is in Hebrew, so you have to believe me. And I'll just do a couple of parts from the song, not the whole. If you want to join in the chorus, it's very simple. It works like that. Ya'udu. Try. Wait. Ya'udu. Ya'udu. נולדתי בשדות בין גלילות להרצליה, בין פרגים לחרציות, כשאביב הגיע הייתי רק בן 12, כשהכל נגמר אני כבר בן 80, אבל עדיין מר לי מה. כל כך הרבה קרה מאז, טויח סויד. כל כך הרבה שנים חלפו אלי, עדיין יש אצלי מפתח חלוד ביד. I still have my rotten key לבית שהיה לי בין גלילות להרצליה. השמש שם שקעה מזמן, אבל הבוקר לא הפציע. יעודו, 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 יעודו. נולדתי בשדות בין גלילות הרצליה, מתחת עץ התות של ישליל אל קיבליה, גבעת האהבה שלי עכשיו היא מצבה, לתום לחלומות, להרס ותקווה, שאוכל לשוב אליה, that I can come back to it, או לבוא לבקר. יא אמי אנא לי בחיבק, אוי כמה זה דוקר, ומתחת מדשאות מנשיע נפשי עוד הומיה לשנה הבאה בירושלים וישליל אל קיבליה הבנויה. Next year in Jerusalem and ישליל אל קיבליה. יעודו 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 יעודו. Thank you. Thank you very much for coming here. Thank you especially to those of you like Yair and Itzik, like Evgeny and Yair that do not agree, that were willing to come here and share your opinions. Thanks to the Palestinian people that one day will return. And thanks mostly to the organizers, Lucy and Yana and everyone else. If you want to somehow engage in activity here for justice, for peace, and for liberation, there are the right people to go to, like organizing something in school, in university, in a community hall. There is lots of stuff to do here in the Czech Republic, so please come and let's create this space of starting to talk about things and then to do things that will actually affect the situation on the ground. And last thing, sorry for the guitar not so tuned and missing like that, but I hope you heard some of my cry and some of my take on this sad situation. And have a good night. Bye-bye.